Welcome back to our part 2 of Raising Kids Catholic here at Village Catholic Conversation. My name is John Kinuthia, Catholic speaker, life coach, joined by my co-host at Bima Jr.
How you doing today, John?
Doing very well. And our friend, Tom Fado. This is a very interesting conversation. And as you heard in our previous talk here, all the things that we can do as parents to make sure that we help create trust with our kids, and the language that we use, and taking the responsibility of being Catholic. So right this episode, there are a couple of things that I would like us to do. But the first thing is, where does it all begin? We know we have different demographics of children from all the ages. Our audience range from all the ages. So how can we help them?
Well, I think, John, like we talked about in the first part, it does begin with that premise, which is my job as parent, above everything, is to do all that I can to help my child in their relationship with Jesus Christ so they go to heaven. And that's first and foremost. So that's, no matter where you are, that's your starting point. Obviously, as we'll talk about some specific things, the younger you start, the better, but it's not too late. It might be a little bit harder if you adopt that mindset, when your kids are all teenagers or older. But the mindset really is what everything permeates and comes out of that mindset, Let me just give you one concrete example. I know for our listeners, I think concrete examples are good. So we talked a little bit about in the first episode about the culture and how the culture could be very challenging for us in terms of faith. Yeah. So I look at the world of movies, music, television, right? When we were, we're a little older than you are, but when we were kids, that wasn't a problem. Our parents could put us in front of the TV, and other than maybe Sunday night at 9 o'clock when the ABC movie came on, that might have had a couple words that that really weren't horrible, there'd be a warning about that TV show, and we'd go up and parents would be like, go to bed, right? Nowadays, though, you can't put a child in front of an unattended TV with cable, because everything that we don't want them to see, it's there. So our parents didn't have that issue. So fast forward to today. So when our children were younger, for example, they knew, this is one little small thing, they knew that if they went to a friend's house, a friend up the street, and they were going to hang out there or go to a sleepover, that when there was a decision about watching a TV show or a movie, and my children didn't know already that they were allowed to watch that movie, they knew they had to call home to ask permission. Or if they were going to a sleepover at a new location with a new friend, it would be my wife or I calling that parent to talk about what is on the docket for that evening as to what they're going to watch, okay? And there were times when either from the conversation with that parent, we expressed that our children may not watch that show, and they made a change, so we were witnessing, right, to that parent. Or there were times when, think about my oldest daughter, would call home and say, they're going to watch this show. And we'd say, well, you can't. And so my daughter either would come home, or she would find hopefully another friend there to do something else. Now I know some parents go, wait a minute, that's
micromanaging.
Too hard. That's or your children are gonna be viewed, you as a family, you're gonna be viewed as, you're those people, right? Those radical. And I said, yes, you're exactly right. Because that's what we're called to do. Remember that first point. There are no buts, okay? Now my children, I'm not saying it was always easy, but I told them, you can use me as an excuse. I don't expect my, 10-year-old daughter to stand in the gap and say, sorry, girls, I can't watch that show. I think it's morally wrong. No, but they would say, I got to check with my mom and dad, because if they find, they'll kill me. Blame it on me. I have no problem with that. I'll take that heat. But that's doing my job. I can tell you now that most of my children are older, they understand it now, and they get it. And you know what? There was a time that they went back, and they might have watched that TV show later in life, and they went, oh, I see now why you didn't want us to watch that when we were 10. But it's those type of small things. But as the parent, again, you have to be willing that you're going to take some heat. And I can remember a parent like, well, what do you mean that show's not good? Why? We watch all the time. And I would say, well, do you really want me to talk about it? I mean, if you really want me to express my view, I'll tell you why. Again, not condemning, not judging, but offering, and sometimes having that chance to witness and help a parent. There were times when a parent really didn't know about a particular show or movie, and I went through it, and I went through the parents' guide, and parents went, I never knew that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
just one,
Yeah.
but that's a practical type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's the difference between hoping our kids stay and taking deliberate action to guide them.
Deliberate decisions. What about you, my friend?
Well, I was going to say, just to piggyback on Tom's comments, which is one of the discussions that we had with our children as they got a little bit older, even when they were still pretty young, even at 5, 6, 7, is this idea that just because it's on doesn't mean that it's acceptable to watch. And that even grown-ups, there are films that are for grown-ups that no grown-up should be watching.
Right.
So,
Right.
So this idea that because you have the freedom to choose something doesn't mean that you're allowed to choose it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that almost sets up a thing where they become discerning media consumers from a very young age, because ultimately you're controlling what they're watching when they're little, but when they're 18 or 19 and they're off at college and you have no control over them, and you find out, oh my gosh, my son's watching porn. Well, did you ever have the conversation about
Right.
these certain things are not morally
Right.
acceptable?
Did you prepare them to
Yeah.
be
To prepare
discerning?
them to be
Yeah.
discerning things.
Yeah.
And I know I have friends that totally did not allow any of their children to have any access to TV or anything, which is fine. It's difficult to teach self-control when you have no ability to exercise that self-control. But sometimes it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
My example would be, both my kids were competitive swimmers, and we spent a lot of time at swim meets doing nothing. And almost every other kid had the little, what at the time were they're not Game Boys, they're kind of little like traveling game systems. And we would say, no, bring a book. Just bring a book. Both of my children eventually said, thank you for not doing that. No, we're not watching movies when we're traveling the 20 minutes between here and there.
Yeah.
Okay, in a car.
Yeah,
You don't need to
yeah,
watch a movie.
yeah.
Even on a road trip, we put books on tape in. And both of my children have great attention spans, and their reading comprehension, because it's like, bring a book.
Yeah.
You don't need to play video games all the time.
Yeah.
So those are teaching your young children to be good consumers of media and to be discerning at a young age leads to adults that do the same thing.
Yeah. So that sounds like more too on the concept of language that you were talking about earlier. It's not the language of condemning the media, but it's also finding a positive way around it. Like you're saying, bring a book, set the tone, be the model.
Make good choices.
Make deliberate choices on how they feed on that, because again, it's a culture of media. It's there. Something I normally say is that I didn't grow up with TV. I watched my first TV when I was about probably 20. I didn't grow up with TV.
Right.
Even in my own room, I didn't have a TV until I came here and I said, okay, we're gonna have a TV. So one conversation that I find myself having constantly with my 4-year-old is there are all these shows with witches and with the weird characters. I'm like, how do you even want to watch this? This, to me, isn't the best thing to watch. Although he may say, well, we watch this in school. And I say, no. This is feeding you the wrong image of who you are as a person.
That's correct.
And, well, he was taking a while to get that. But I'm sure one day when he's a little grown, probably we'll keep having this conversation, because I want to make sure that he knows we are human beings with souls. We are human beings that don't necessarily depict people as witches, as bad, and as fighting all the time. And which is probably part of it is my own way of viewing the world. I want to make sure that the world is a better place. If he can understand that, if he can grow with that, and again, this is based on the language, the choices that you make for your family, for your kids, in the consuming of the media and stuff like that. And I think the practical examples that both of you are given. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it there. You fill their lives, you build their world with things that are going to support what you're trying to do in their lives, that are going to support their moral journey, that are going to support a relationship with Jesus, and you eliminate or minimize anything that's going to get in the way of that. It's really not that complicated. It just takes some backbone to be willing, to do it. I could think of one that when I would talk to parent groups again. I came across a statistic when I was in campus ministry that said when it comes to dating, right? Because in this day and age, especially with romantic comedies, and it's cute and it's well, I came across a statistic that said that when students wait until they are 16 before they date. And when I mean date, I mean like when they actually go on a date, one boy, one girl. If they wait until 16 before they're allowed to actually go on a date like that, so not talking, hang out with a group of friends, but just a one-on-one date, 95% chance that they will not be sexually active by the time they graduate from high school if they wait until 16. If they start dating one by 13, 95% of those students will be sexually active before they finish high school. Okay, that statistic that hit me like a 2x4. Right, and I would talk to parents about that, and so with our children, we've followed suit on that. Right, and you know what? It's phenomenal. Phenomenal. Again, all my girls now are older than 16, and they look back and they appreciate that. They appreciate that. And again, it's not about saying that dating is wrong or horrible or evil, but it prepared them, that discernment, right? That by the age of 16, all right, with all the other ways that we've talked with them and helped guide them, now they knew who they were. They had their own intrinsic value. They understand who they were as a daughter of God. And now they can make much better decisions than a 13-year-old who's getting their information from movies and TV. Another practical example.
So the way I hear you, both of you, in this conversation, it's not saying you go make your own decisions. It's as a parent taking responsibility.
Can I talk about that real quick? Right? I'm sorry to jump in. But sometimes people say, oh, but they have to make their own choices. You can't force them. You can't force them. Now, you have little kids, right?
Yeah.
If you let your son eat chocolate all day, would he? Right? If you let your son decide whether or not to brush his teeth, would he? When you teach your son to cross the road, right? Do you force him look both ways, right?
He almost gave me a heart attack a while ago trying to run across the road.
My point is, as parents, right, we force our children to do things all the time. In fact, if we don't do that, we'd be irresponsible.
Yes.
Well, if we can worry about our children's teeth, right, or getting hit by a car, or their weight, or whatever, shouldn't we put equal diligence in regards to their soul? So, of course.
That's a pretty amazing way to say it. You looked at me like there was something.
No. I'm fondly remembering when my kids were little. It just seems like it seems like it was just yesterday, and now they're grown, kind of young adults, and just the conversations that we would have. And I think the other thing is, and I think both my son and daughter would both concur that at age-appropriate times, as they got older, we would speak to them about why we're making the decisions that we're making.
That's huge.
So it wasn't just a mandate to,
correct,
this isn't happening. At a level they understood this is why I'm saying, you don't understand it now, but this is why I'm making this decision, okay? And the other thing is, and some of this sounds like kind of just non-Catholic secular stuff, and it's just good parenting, which it is, because they're not mutually exclusive, I said no a lot. And sometimes, I'm pointing to my daughter who's sitting doing tech work today, I would say no just because I could say no. And no particular reason. And you laugh, but as adults, we know we don't always get what we want.
Yeah, that's right.
I think good parents say no.
And there are times when I would think about whether to say yes or no, and there would have been no downside to saying yes, but I felt, you know what? I'm just going to say no today, so that your kid gets used to not having everything they want every time they ask for it, because that's not the way the adult world works.
And when you explain to your children why some decisions were made, what else did that convey to them? It conveyed that you loved them.
Right.
It conveyed that you cared for them.
I'm paying attention to the details.
Right. We would tell the children, they know that my job as your father is to guide you home. So I would have that conversation with my children. So I may be making a decision sometime that you may not like, but that's my role. I got to be able to look my father in the face and say, I did all I could to protect and to guide the child that you've entrusted me with. It's a powerful message.
You know, that I'm going to tie that to a message I had from, I was watching a Facebook Live from Father Walsh from St. Raymond's, and he said it is his role as a pastor, as a father, to the congregation to stand and stick with the truth.
Right.
Because when he goes to heaven, he wants to answer the right way to God the Father. Did you teach the truth? And you make me think, as fathers, as parents, it's our role to speak the truth and to explain why, because I think that's a missing link. In my engagement with the parents and some of the students that I speak with, there's this element of being busy, and you're not there for your children, or you're not there to engage, to have a conversation. How can we address, because some of the parents, I'm sure, who will be listening to this conversation is, I'm busy working. I work 3 jobs. I don't have time. It's easier for me to give them my phone to watch some YouTube or to watch some shows so that I can do ABCD. I can get the stuff done. What kind of conversation, or what kind of tips can we give the?
I was going to say, well, from my experience, so my dad worked in the grocery business, and now that Sunday at the time wasn't a thing, he was home on Sundays, but he worked 6 days a week, and I barely ever saw him. My mom worked as well outside the house, and but the time that I had with my parents was good quality time. And I distinctly remember there were days where my dad would take a Saturday off, and I knew he had to be tired, and he would get up very early in the morning and take us out to go fishing, And it wasn't all the time, but when my dad was home, he was home. And I was important to him, and he spent time with me. When my mom was home, she was home. So I know it sounds cliche that it's not necessarily about the amount of time, but what you do with it. And the amount of time helps. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The more time you can spend with your kids, the better. We made a decision when my daughter Rebecca was born for me to quit my job and stay at home and be a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
My wife was making most of the money and had our insurance, and I had a job that was kind of like, it was a job, but it was not really a career position, because for us, it was important that we raise our children. Not everybody has that chance. So I understand some people, they both have to work, and they have to have child care outside the home. For us, we were able to make that decision because it gave me a chance to be around at the very, very informative first 5 or 6 years of my kids' lives. So if you do have to have child care, it's important that you connect with someone who shares your moral view of the world and understand that they need to back you up. And it's not just a place, you should not be just sending your kids somewhere where
You're not dumping
them. Just like,
Keep my
okay,
child alive.
make sure they don't cut any major parts off their body and catch themselves on fire and eat poison. Okay, you need to find someone who shares your worldview, your Catholic worldview, if not a grandparent, to back you up in the decisions that you want your child to learn to make on their own.
And like I said, that question, John, whatever time you have is the time that you give.
Yeah.
And again, if you have that mindset where my first role is what I do with the children, then that changes things. I think about when kids were real little and bedtime, right? Bedtime. Oh, read a book. And I remember years where I was like, I want to go do something. I want to go veg out. I don't want to read the Lorax again. But when I changed my mindset and I started embracing that time,
Changes everything.
May change everything. So there are, yes, as a parent, you're going to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
You know that, financially, time-wise, etc. But from a faith perspective, that is our role. John, you are the first glimpse of God the Father that your children will ever have. Think about that. They will see God the Father first through their own father. So that is daunting, but it also is encouraging. And when we get that into our mindset, that I am the hands, the feet, the eyes, and the ears of God, until they're old enough to know Him on their own and get that relationship going, I am God to them in this world. I am the hands, the feet, the mouth of God. They will learn to love Him as I love my child. Phenomenal.
Wow.
There's a reason number 4, honor your father and mother. If you can't honor your father and your children can't honor you, there's no way you're going to honor the father.
Yeah.
So what Tom is saying is, your children, they need to learn to honor you so they understand the importance of honoring. Because if they cannot honor you, and in the same respect, just as God the Father is faithful to the truth, we as parents,
Right.
your children honor you better when you're faithful to the truth
Yeah.
and you're guiding them out of love and not out of your own kind of personal whims or whatever.
Yeah.
So, which isn't always, you're not always making decisions that as a human broken person you would make. You're making decisions based on the love of your child.
Yeah.
So the fourth commandment is an important one for a reason, because it's teaching us to love the Father.
Yeah.
We're modeling that for your kids.
Wow, this is obviously a great conversation, and it can keep going and going and going. But I do appreciate all the points that you're bringing here today. And as you can see, our dear listeners, we have mindset conversation, we have language, we have trust. And when you were talking, being the father, something came to my thought about one of the priests who was saying, in the family, during dinner or during every time you're having a meal, that table represents like the altar. And the parents are like the priests who are offering the family to the Father. So being this first place when the children are sitting around the table and just having that conversation with them, having a meal together, because that's another point too, having a meal with your kids, and accelerating and really encouraging your kids to speak and to share what's in their heart. Because sometimes we don't have time to listen and understand their language. And I think that's powerful. That goes to what you're saying, modeling the kids see the love of God through you and everything that we're doing. And I think this is just a phenomenal conversation. So I don't want to take too much time on this conversation because it can keep going on, and I'm sure we'll revisit this.
We'll come back to this in the future.
I'll give one last thought if I may.
Sure.
Men, I'm looking at the men. Don't wimp out, okay? Because I think too many times we as men, oh well, if she's going to do it, if my wife's going to do it, then I'll just kick back. You know, we I don't know about you guys, ever fall in that role at home? No, you did never do that, right? No. We can wimp out.
Yeah, we can.
When it comes to being, you are to be the spiritual leader of your household. Don't wimp out, okay? I never saw my father lead a prayer once ever my entire life. I'm not going to make that. What I would say was the same mistake. Okay? We need to take the role. Most times we know mom will do it, but men, don't wimp out. You need to do it. Your children need to see the faith coming through you.
Yeah, that's definitely.
And one more quick statistic. No, do you know that most families with kids that attend church, it has nothing to do with mom attending the church. It has to do with dad.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact numbers, but the families where dad attends the church on a weekly basis, the percentage of children and kids who stay connected to their faith, and it's across all Christian faiths, is astronomically higher.
If dad stays home, how could mom even get the children to go? When they can say,
they can, but it's hard.
Right, look at daddy.
Yeah.
I want to be like daddy.
I want to be like daddy.
Yeah, be like daddy. Daddy, get your butt into the pew.
Yeah.
I also that kind of leads me to and again, some of the conversations I have had with parents, parents when I'm helping them through this conversation is, what about those people who are married to fathers who are not of Catholic faith, or they don't practice the faith at all?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's
a whole nother conversation.
Good setup for another conversation.
We will. So anyway, we're gonna leave it here, and hopefully that you got some points that in your own household, in your own home, in your own men's group and parent group, mother's group, you have found some pointers that you can start having a conversation around your home and with your family, so that we can build the faith of our children and we can keep them Catholic. Because again, that's what conversations are all about. Don't shy away, don't remount, just be strong. This has been Village Catholic Conversation. I'm your host, John Kinuthia, joined by my co-host, Bima Jr., and our friend, Tom Fado. Until next time,
go start your own conversations.